All right. Good evening, everyone. I was getting ready to say, I hope this finds you well. I'm still typing emails in my mind. Um, I am Medina Sani. I'm the Assistant Director for Programming with the Hopin program, and I am extremely excited about our workshop this evening. We are joined by two superstars, megastars, actually. One of whom you have met in the past, Johnny Bailey, who is a social entrepreneur and marketing strategist. Um, and a new face, a new person we'd like to welcome to the Fly family, Nicaila Matthews Akome, who is the creator and host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast. Johnny will be taking my job today, which I'm excited about, and moderating the conversation because he does it way better than me. We'll bet some money on that on the side, actually. So just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions, of course, put them in the chat. This conversation is really intended to be interactive. And so when our guests and our hosts are asking questions or asking to participate, please do so. It makes the conversation a lot more fruitful and you get a lot more from it. I will be answering questions as well if any come up in the chat. Otherwise, the recording has started. It will be available if you have to leave or come back in. And I will turn it over to you, Johnny.
Thank you, Medina. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Looking forward to a very, very engaging discussion. So we're going to be asking you questions and we're going to be dropping gems on you around passive income, around side hustles. So I encourage you to take notes. One of the most important things to do when you're sitting at a talk or you're in a class lecture is to create mechanisms that help you take the information in this really warm, hot moment and learn how to translate it into your day-to-day, or learn how to apply that learning to something in the future, right? Don't let this information just come hit you and be lost on you tomorrow. So find a way to write it down and leverage it as you go forward. I imagine you're here because you care about making money. I imagine you're in college because you care about making a difference in the world, providing for your family, doing something that you love to do. All those are great reasons to get an education, to find a career. But there's one thing that school doesn't always teach us, and it's about how to create a side hustle or how to create wealth in our lives. So today's talk will demystify a little bit of how to create a side hustle or how to create passive income. And I understand that you all are in the STEM field. And so you're probably embarking upon a career, and you all can tell me in the chat, what are you studying? Do you want to be a doctor? You want to be a scientist? I imagine that you are going into a field that's going to be very time intensive. You're going to work long hours. You're going to be in the hospital, in an office, in a lab. You're not going to have a ton of time to do entrepreneurial stuff, right? So you want to think about what are the viable options for side hustles? And one is, why should I even have one in the first place? So we'll talk about that today. My name is Johnny Bailey. I am a two-time small business owner. I'm also a digital coach for Google and a program manager with Amazon's Black Business Accelerator. So I do a lot of different things. I'm a side hustle pro in my own right, yes. But I have the actual side hustle pro, Nicaila Akome, who is the founder and primary host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast. And so she sits with tons and hundreds of side hustle pros, entrepreneurs, to talk about how they do it, to leave blueprints for other folks who want to get into it. So that's my intro. I'll now throw it to Nicaila to do a quick intro, add color to her background as well.
Sure. So thank you so much, Johnny, and thank you, everyone for having me this evening. So for those of you guys who haven't listened to the show and don't know much about me, as Johnny said, I'm Nicaila Matthews Akome, and I am a certified side hustler. I've been side hustling since the minute I graduated from college. Now, many of you, you have your major, you're kind of have an idea of what you want to do. But let me give you a spoiler alert. That might change. That might change when you graduate. You might find yourself going on a different path, or you may stick to your major field and realize that, hey, I have multi-passions and I hate that I have to choose. Like, I would love to dip and dabble in some other things on the side. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about how you do that, where you even begin. And then, of course, like Johnny said, this is interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to chime in and just let us know, because it's really helpful for me to know kind of where your mind is when it comes to side hustles. Like, obviously you're here tonight, but I'd love to know more about some of the things that are percolating in your mind. So let's go ahead and jump into these slides. So the goal.
Let's stop right there before we go to the goal. And can you all tell us in the chat what interests you about passive income, or why do you want a side hustle?
Yes.
Medina, is the chat turned on? Just making sure.
Yes, it is. Let me just double check.
Or do we just have a shy audience?
They're warming up. It's all right. I know.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. It's coming. All right.
Go.
Jordan says, I want to be a teacher and there's no money in that, so I'm going to need something on the side.
Kevin, well,
power to you, Jordan. We need our teachers. I'm watching Abbott Elementary, and I definitely have even more, it's like such a true to life kind of show, even in the comedy.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good show too. I've been watching that as well. I have a lot of different interests, says Tabitha Irene. I can use it to invest. Sure. Mihak, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make money while doing a graduate degree. Yep. Denise, I want to save for a rainy day fund. Dimitri, I like income and I like being passive. It's a win-win. I have a lot of interests, contrasting interests that don't want to let go. Yeah. Good. This is good feedback. I'm loving it.
Yes, very helpful. All right. So, well, you're all in the right place, clearly, because tonight we're going to talk about how to turn your side hustle ideas into passive income, like where to start to really get into the side hustle zone. So let's go ahead and get into some of those things. So first of all, agenda really quickly, just going to run through what's a side hustle. I know you might think you already have the definition, but actually some people define it differently. So we'll get into what's a side hustle, what's passive income, tips for side hustle success, and then we'll go through some passive income ideas to get your brains, just starting to think through some of those. So first of all, what is a side hustle? Now, this is the Side Hustle Pro, aka my definition. I view a side hustle as a business with the potential to generate income outside of your 9-to-5 or your 9-to-9 or whatever hours you end up working. So I don't think of it as something that is like just a hobby kind of thing. This is something that you're going to develop that will hopefully allow you to generate passive income. Speaking of passive income, so what do we really mean when we say passive income? That can be something that's actually pretty hard to achieve because we know everything requires a little bit of work. But what we mean when we say passive income is that it's income that requires minimal labor to earn and maintain. So you still got to put in a little work to set up, to maintain it. But the idea here is that it's minimal. It's something that's very doable on the side.
Do you all have any passive income ideas or side hustle ideas that you've already been working on? I would love to hear what do you all have percolating out there. Maybe we can help you navigate down that path.
Yes.
Making charcuterie boards. Oh, culinary art here.
Yeah.
That's a nice
I know hustle. I do not know how to do that at all, Jordan. So that is indeed a side hustle that's needed.
Yeah. And so we'll talk a little bit about side hustles and passive. I know the narrative was passive, but I think side hustles have a place that's really valuable as well. That might require a little bit more active time, but can be very fruitful and also profitable as well. So continue to share whatever ideas you all have. And Michaela, back to you.
All right. And, as Johnny said, sometimes your side hustle will require, at least for some time, more active investment. But the great thing about it and the idea is it should be a platform. Like you overall want to create a side hustle that's a launching pad for you to have passive income in some way, shape, or form. Ooh, Irene says she had a YouTube channel that made some money. Yes, let's talk about that, Irene, because I'm in the process of really ramping mine up. So let's talk about these tips though for side hustle success. Lesson number one is you have got to get out of your own head. So some of you mentioned ideas in the chat. I'm curious to know if you have started it yet and why, because sometimes a lot of us are waiting for these perfect circumstances to get started. And the reality is there is no perfect circumstance. You kind of just have to start where you are and with what you have. Case in point, when I started the Side Hustle Pro podcast, I started recording my podcast in my bedroom. This is me on a desk that's next to my nightstand. This was the pillow fort that I used to create that recording studio sound. And I learned that because I started my podcast when I was working full-time at NPR, National Public Radio. I was leading marketing there for, ironically, their own podcast. And I learned that when journalists go out in the field, they create that pillow fort, right? So I was like, I have pillows, I could do that. And all of my interviews to this day are conducted virtually. So I'm now 6 years in and 290 plus episodes later, 6 million downloads later, Side Hustle Pro is about to be inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame next Friday. And I still have not set foot inside of a podcast studio. And I started in my bedroom.
Wow. So, can I add to that though? Go back to that slide. I want to talk about that.
Talk about it.
On the last slide, you were really just illustrating your journey into becoming a now Hall of Fame podcaster. And what I heard from you is that you once worked at NPR and you were learning the ropes and you kind of ramped up in this space as an employee, but that empowered you with the confidence and it gave you the skill set to now say, I can do this on my own and make money.
Yes, that was my process. So with starting a podcast, I actually had a blog before I had a podcast. And, you know, as I was doing the blog, this was around the time like Serial came out, Serial, the podcast. I don't know if any of you have listened to that. So podcasts all of a sudden really were generating a lot of interest. And so that was the first time I ever listened to a podcast. And I said, this is interesting. This blogging stuff doesn't get as much attention right now. Let me look at podcasts. And just as fate would have it, shortly after I started having that kind of thought process, I ended up landing a job at NPR. So of course I was intimidated. I was around the corner from Guy Raz, who hosts How I Built This and a slew of other shows. And, you know, so I'm listening to like the perfect smooth voice every day and like, oh, I can't do a podcast, but it just kept calling me. And I ultimately, once I learned how scrappy journalists really are and how they really can record and send in audio from anywhere, as long as they set up the right studio sound around them, which oftentimes is our blankets, you know, cushions, whatever they can find just to keep the audio as inside. That's why I'm in a closet right now, right? So once I learned that, I said, well, let me just test it out. Let me test it out. It's calling me. And then once I did, the response showed me that people really wanted this content. So
was it a leap of faith as of like you left NPR to pursue your own podcast, or did you start it on the side? And then
I started on the side,
generated enough income that you knew you could leave your job.
Correct. That's exactly what happened. I started it on the side, and I am a business major by trade. I mean, I wasn't in undergrad. I actually shied away from business in undergrad. I majored in communications, still love communications. The two obviously still play a deep role in who I am. But then I went and got my MBA. So I went to graduate school for a master's of business administration at the University of Michigan. And I started, so having that lens, everything I did from there forward, I was thinking, how do I make this a business? How do I generate income? What, you know, how do I monetize? What is the income that can be generated in this industry? So once I had that lens, I started the podcast and then started researching more about like, how do you get sponsorships? And once I was starting to do that, and also started to do some of my passive income streams like courses, that's when I realized that I could do this full time. And I started generating income before I left, saved up, and quit a year and a half after launching the podcast.
Could you have done both simultaneously? Why did you leave to do your own thing?
So I did both simultaneously for a while, and you absolutely could. What I realized is that, first of all, I was going to approach this like a business. So 6 months after launching the podcast, I incorporated my podcast name. I trademarked my podcast name. I incorporated my business, opened my business bank account because I was starting to, generate income. And I knew that this was not something that was going to be a hobby for me. So then it was like having two jobs. And I decided, okay, I could continue to do both, at just a medium level, or, if I'm generating this much with just side hustling, if I'm able to cover my rent and more with just side hustling, imagine if I left. So once I knew I was in a place to do that, that is when I left, because I knew that once I was able to give it my full attention, that it would only grow even more.
Yeah, and that's a good point to call out, that you were interested in your podcast becoming your full time. Yep. That was a goal of yours. And so you were willing to let the capacity grow to a point where you could then make that leap. Now, the differentiator that I want to just highlight is that not every side hustle needs to grow into your full-time job.
Right.
If it's a charcuterie board business, it might just be, okay, I'm gonna make an extra $1,000 a month doing 5 or 6 little parties. Boom. Yep. And that's all you ever want it to be. And that's okay. Because you can still, you're a teacher, you're making money, you're fulfilling, you're doing really important work for humanity. And then you have a little side hustle that you enjoy, you make money, and now you can invest more, you can travel more because of this business, right? Mm-hmm. Or that's one model. Another model is, I'm gonna do this so I can fire my job, and then I can go do the big thing. So just two different paths, but both of them are very fruitful. Now I see Denise has a question, says, did you have people that doubted your process? How did you deal with that?
Yes. I'm sure you can speak to this as well, Johnny. Whenever you're starting something that is outside of the beaten path, right? Like there are these boxes that society has set up. Sometimes the boxes look like majors, right? Like people have set up, here are the different things you can do when you grow up. And the world is changing, right? We now have people making a living on YouTube, making a living on TikTok. And yes, those paths are scary because you don't have a history of people who have done this that you can look to and say, is this a good path? Like, will I continue to make money? Mm-hmm. So yeah, of course, people doubted. And I had to remember that at some point, and again, this came through lived experience and failures. I've had side hustles that did not work. So I was very much a person who, yes, I was willing to take a leap, but I took a calculated leap. I'm a calculated risk taker. That's why I had a job and started my side hustle on the side. That's why I love side hustling, because I don't believe in just quitting your job to start a business. I believe in getting that job check as long as you can, right? I believe the job is your first investor, and I believe you should collect that check and do that for as long as you can until you absolutely don't want to anymore, if you want to end up leaving the job, or stay there but find a way to do it manageably. So
yeah, and I would just, in really in as much brevity as I can possibly offer to this question, for me, I prefer to be a hybrid. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I like having a 9-to-5 and my side hustles and my businesses on the side. That's how I like to get to the bag, because I have that security, I have that learning curve that the corporate world offers you, and the infrastructure. But then you also have the autonomy to make as much as you want in your business, and you have an income stream that gives you more confidence when you go to work, because you know if you get fired or if anything happens to this job, you want to quit, someone disrespects you, and you're like, I'm out of here. You know you can still pay your bills, you can still survive, and you still have control over your life. So that to me is how I push through the doubt, because I want that level of comfort in my everyday life.
And I love that word hybrid, Johnny. I really like that as well. Like, I think entrepreneurship has absolutely been super, it's been made out to be, romanticized and all this other stuff. And it should not be that way. So I absolutely agree with being a hybrid. Like that's what I was for a long time. And, the only reason that I'm not still a hybrid is honestly I was just so passionate about this one thing, and I didn't want to feel like I wasn't doing a good enough job at my job anymore. Like, that's not the person I am. I have integrity, and I don't want to not perform to my highest at their job if I'm completely so invested in my own thing. So yeah, I have some more tips for you guys. We just kind of went through some of these questions that come to mind with tip number 1. So that's how you get out of your own head, you guys. You really give yourself room to explore on the side and get to the point where you're so confident in what you're doing. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody says, and it shouldn't matter what anyone says. So let's talk about lesson number 2. So lesson number 2 is you got to take small baby steps to lay the foundation. And really that starts with thinking through if this thing that is calling you, if this hobby is really what you need to be doing. And you don't have to narrow that down by yourself. I actually recommend sending your friends a quick survey. This is what I did. And this is actually what led me to start my blog, which turned into the podcast. So I sent them a survey via Google. It was anonymous, so they didn't have to put in their email. And I asked them things like, what do you think I'm good at? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Can you give me an example? Because this is really, this was one of the most helpful questions. Can you give me an example of a time you saw me really shine and excel at a task or project? And if money wasn't an object, what do you think I should be doing? And then what other things could I be giving back to the world that I'm not currently giving back to it now? So this is really helpful because, again, a lot of you have picked a major, and as seniors, most of you are seniors, you feel like, this is what I picked, I got to stick to it. Spoiler alert, that's not true. And second, spoiler alert, there's still ways that you could be impacting the world that do not fit into your current career path that you're pursuing. So, question to open it up, and Johnny, let us know. So what's the first step that you take when you're starting a new side hustle, and you're adding on to your hybrid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, when I think about starting a side hustle, I like to do my research. And the beautiful thing about 2022 is that we're living in the information era where everything is at your fingertips on Google or on YouTube. So you can literally research, find information about any idea that you have. You can find out if these businesses already exist. And if you feel inclined to start a business, you can go on YouTube and learn the skill and learn exactly how to do it. So there's the barriers to entry on side hustles are very low, lower than they've ever been. Yep. But there's more money in circulation than there's ever been. And the barriers to side hustles are lower than they've ever been. Why are you not getting to it? Why not start something on the side? Yes, I know you're focusing on your high earning 6-figure career, which you should always prioritize. However, ownership is really important. And one thing I think about when I am working a 9-to-5 or working at a tech company is that I don't own that company. One thing I think about when I'm posting on social media, I don't own that social media platform. They can suspend my account, cancel my account, delete my account, take my pictures, put them on somewhere else. They can basically own all of my content. So I think the way that we own is having our own website. I think the way that we own is starting a legitimate, a viable business that we can either trade our time for money or set up an infrastructure where other people can pay for things while we're sleeping. And that's passive income. So the first step is research and education. And right now you're doing just that. In this session, you're researching, you're educating yourself, you're becoming more inspired, and you're one step closer to then saying, I have an idea that I'm now going to put into action.
Right.
Nicaila made some good points about legitimizing your business. Of course, once you want to actually give your business a name, your baby is born, you should, of course, get your business entity or, become an LLC so you can generate income and be recognized from a legal tax perspective. You want to trademark your business, make sure no one tries to steal your brand or steal your name. And what I would say, just open up a spreadsheet and start taking account of your finances. Mm-hmm. Taking one step back, I think you should all have your own personal accounting spreadsheet. for your own bills and your own investments and your own debts, right? So that now you know how much money you have coming in from your one stream of income. Okay, I make $120,000 from the hospital. Now, because of my student loans and because of my bills and my lifestyle, and I want to make a couple investments in this in Bitcoin, I don't really have much left over, right? So you're like, you make 120, you spend 120. So now you have to determine where you can cut some costs and invest into your side hustle. So I think knowing how much money you make and how much money you spend is a really great place to start when you want to start a new business.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with that. And, you know, that the next tip that we'll get into touches on that, but I also wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, Johnny, about, you know, when you side hustle, another great thing about it is it gives you a lot of confidence. It gives you a lot of confidence because you're able to, with certainty say, okay, I know I don't want to do this full time because I tried it out on the side and I don't like it. So that's one of the ways you narrow down what you actually want to do when you grow up. When I graduated with my communications degree, communications is so broad. I dabbled in entertainment. So I worked at MTV Networks, right? And I thought I wanted to be in public relations at a media entertainment company. I learned that I hate public relations, but I really learned that I hate that because I started a PR company on the side. I had no experience whatsoever, but I made up business cards, Nikayla PR, and, and started to work with my classmates who wanted to be like musicians and things. And I was their publicist. I learned like, hey, I don't want to do this. And this is another thing that side hustling really helps you with. It gives you that confidence, not only in how you show up at work, knowing that, hey, I have other talents. No matter what you say to me, I know that I'm skilled. I can get another job if I need to, but it also helps you to truly, truly learn what it is that you want to do in life. So let's get into lesson number 3, which touches on that research piece that Johnny mentioned. So you are going to have to really take account of your finances so that you can invest in your own development. Now, you can do a lot of this free, thankfully. Like nowadays, there's a podcast on so many things. You can learn a lot just listening to podcasts, just going onto YouTube. You can identify experts in your industry, people who are doing the charcuterie boards, people who are investing, you know, people who are doing all of the different things you're interested in. Find out if they have a blog, podcast, courses, speaking events, and then research and attend at least one of the top conferences in your industry. Nowadays, so much is virtual still that you can skip out on the whole flight and ticket portion of it. So as you are entering into the corporate world or, you know, the private sector, public sector world, save some of those vacation days for your development, for at least one conference or professional development event, and then invest in at least one business development course or event, and never, ever stop learning. I don't know if you guys are aware of the whole fixed versus growth mindset mentality or, you know, theory. However, just to sum it up quickly, it's like people who believe that in fixed mindsets feel like, okay, I graduate from college, I know what I know. Whereas those who believe in a growth mindset realize that you never stop learning. And so believing in a fixed mindset can really keep you very limited because you start to feel like, oh, I graduated, I have this degree, I should know this. When actually the world changes. You know, I graduated from business school. I thought I knew a lot about business then, but the world has completely changed. Nowadays, people have to do business on TikTok. TikTok didn't exist when I was in business school. So I have to never stop learning in order for me to stay sharp and be on top in my industry.
That's really good. I like. Well, can you stay on that slide?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me go back. Hold on. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no, like just to add on to that, I think the fixed mindset versus growth mindset is a really great mental model to kind of play around with, because a lot of folks do believe when they graduate from college that they're done learning and that they should know what they know. And to your point, technology continues to change and evolve. The societal landscape continues to change and evolve. And the economic landscape continues to change and evolve. So nothing stays the same in essence. But if you look at historically, things do repeat themselves. It's just different. We just wear different clothes and have different technologies.
Right.
So that should add some confidence to you that you're doing it right. Nikayla and I are still figuring out all the things that we're doing. And honestly, to kind of answer the previous question and maybe hybrid into this one is like, one thing that one place to start when you're thinking about a side hustle is just things that you like to do.
Yeah.
Or things that you're good at, or things that people constantly ask you to do. That's called a calling. If you're always called to do something, that might be a calling. Is it you cook really well and folks always want you to cook? So maybe you can start a side hustle cooking. However, one caveat is that there are things in life that can be sacred. Just because you're really good at it doesn't mean you should sell it to someone.
I was just about to say that.
Because when you sell things that you really love to do, sometimes you lose the passion for it because you've now made it a business, right? So don't always sell everything that you love. Consider what you want to give away and what you will charge for, what you just love doing it because it's your passion.
Absolutely. I was just about to say that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, and then as far as like what steps you've taken to keep learning new skills, I for one, like I have used platforms like Skillshare to, take a quick class in something to get caught up to speed. Like I said, I definitely use podcasts and YouTube to keep learning and just keep growing. And if there's someone who is an expert in something or they're just a few steps ahead, like this word expert to me just means someone who's a few steps ahead, someone who is, where you want to be a year from now, I will invest in a course if they have it, a program. I have been known to, back when the world was more open, I would, pop up at events just to meet and connect with someone in person who I really admire online. So those are just some things to consider.
Some of my favorite learning platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn has a really great learning management system for professional development. Podcasts are always great. And I'll listen to a lot of personal development and professional development speakers, or even like historical conversations from like Malcolm X on Spotify. And they really inspire me and give me a stronger lens to now see modern day society and also see opportunities that exist around me for starting a business or creating some content that others can consume and I can get paid for it.
All right, so now let's talk about lesson number 4, which is treating your side hustle like another job. All right, we gotta manage our time very well. So when you truly decide that something is a side hustle, again, it is not a hobby. It is not a hobby. You have to take it seriously. And so you have to show up for yourself. You have to show up for yourself as if you hired yourself. What would you want someone that you paid to do some work for you to do? You'd want them to show up on time. You'd want them not to call out sick, like fake sick. You'd want to, not to give excuses why something didn't get done. And you want to do things even when you don't feel like it, because that's when you're going to see those results. So it's easy to say, oh, I'll start this tomorrow, or I'll work on this later. And I'm sure, as you've all experienced, when papers were due or when that midterm or final came up and you kept procrastinating, how bad it felt when you were like on that crunch time at the end. So really, when you determine what you want to explore as a side hustle, carve out that time into your life so that you are truly giving it the attention that it needs.
Yeah. Oh, can you go back to that?
Oh, yeah.
So there's actually a time, what's it called? I have a document I would love to maybe share with you all.
Okay, you want me to stop sharing or?
No.
Oh.
Don't do it that right now, but I'll find it. But when I'm working with like entrepreneurs and small business owners or aspiring entrepreneurs, there's a time is money is basically called the personal time assessment. That's what it's called. And what it is, we all have 24 hours in a day. And the assessment is just basically a chart that asks you to list how many hours you spend working or going to school, watching TV and watching Netflix, on social media, quality time with your partner, quality time with your family and friends, working out, reading, sleeping, cooking, commuting, and doing self-care. That's pretty much what we all do each day, right? More or less, right? So what you want to do is fill out all that time. And then at the end of it, you want to see, just like you did accounting for your finances, now you're doing accounting for your time. Where are you spending your time? You're spending 24 hours a day because you're still alive. But where is it all going? So taking some inventory on your time will also help you understand, do I have time for a side hustle? Mm-hmm. And how can I make time for a side hustle? Because spending 5 hours on social media isn't making you any money unless you're a content creator. If you're going to spend 5 hours there, why not make a YouTube? Why not make a TikTok? Why not become a creator there versus just a consumer? Just things to think about. Yeah. So that time assessment will really give you a lot of context and clarity on what you're doing with your time. And you'll know if you can actually afford to do a side hustle. But once you've done that, I think another great way to treat your side hustle like a job is to set goals and set limits. The goals are going to drive you and motivate you to work hard. The limits are going to help you say no to things, help you set boundaries so you don't lose your 9 to 5 running behind your side hustle.
Yeah. That can happen. You also reminded me of a quick story, Johnny. So speaking of time, I remember one of my coworkers back at NPR, one of my closer coworkers, when she learned that I did the whole Side Hustle Pro thing, she was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how you do this. Where do you get the time? And she would always say that, just being complimentary and everything. And I appreciated it. And most of the time I used to do it after work. Like that was just my sweet spot. I'm not a morning person, right? So one day she was always asking me, but I finally decided to go out for drinks after work with her. And so we go into, any of you who are from DC or going to DC, we went to Marvin's in DC. It might be closed now, I don't know, right? So we go to Marvin's and we walk in, and let me tell you, everybody knew her by name. She was a regular, okay? She had a favorite bartender who would give her free drinks and all of that. And I'm like, okay, that was an exercise to me in time, right? I realized this is where she spends her time. And there's nothing wrong with going out for drinks after work. I needed that, right? That particular day. But you don't have to be there every day, right? I didn't even know that Marvin's, I didn't even know, there was a Tuesday this, there was a Thirsty Thursdays, there's a Wednesday this. Like, you don't have to be there every day. Give up one of those days and devote to your side hustle.
Yeah. So what's funny though? What's funny about that story is that things will grow where your energy flows.
Yes.
So she invested her energy in that social scene. Mm-hmm. Thus, she was abundant. She was popular. She was, it was a good, she had positive growth from that investment. Right? But that was her intentional choice, or maybe unintentional choice, to be there. Now imagine if she was like, I want to redirect that same energy into a profitable side hustle, and she would see that same growth, but it would just look like coins in her bank account. Mm-hmm. People will still know her name.
Did. Yeah. I teased her and I told her that, you need one less Marvin's night. And she eventually was able to start a profitable side hustle. So just some things to think about. So now let's get into lesson number 5, which is practice making money. What do I mean by practice? Well, we're talking about practice. So no matter what kind of side hustle you have, you will have to sell at some point. You will have to put yourself out there. You'll have to say, hey, this is what I do. This is what I charge. Here's where you can get it. Here's my website. And when you first start doing this, I want you to think of this as practice. Actually, you should always think of it as practice, because with that growth mindset, we're always learning. Okay, this didn't work. All right, this was practice. Now I know that this is what I need to do. So the more you practice, the more you'll understand what works for you and what works for your side hustle, and how you can start to do some of this passively. So start practicing now. Don't put too much weight on the outcome of your practice. Just focus on the skills you are developing. An example for me was the very first time I took my knowledge out of my head and organized it into a course. The first time I sold it, I was nervous, I was awkward. It was hard to really put myself out there like that. And, the first result, it was good, right? But as I have done this over and over again, I've gotten better and better. I've increased how much money I make, both actively and passively, but I still consider myself to be practicing because I learn from people who are better at selling courses than myself. And I know that there's still ways that I can go to become even better at that.
Mm.
Before we
back
get
to
into
that?
this, before we get into this, I want to talk about your experience, Johnny, about, practicing and how you view like making money and actually starting to make it passive income.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I love that you highlighted the word practice, because that really does emphasize the importance of never stop learning,
Yeah.
because you're all in a practice. And if you all here are students in the medical field, when you're a doctor, you're practice. It's your practice. You're a dentist, it's your practice.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to be like, practice? 'Cause I grew up playing sports. So I'm like, I don't want to go to the doctor, you practicing on me.
Right.
This is the game time. You're supposed to be like performing. But practice, as I got older, it took on a new meaning, a new definition for me, that we're all essentially practicing because the landscape is changing, the technology changes. So you're always trying to perfect your craft. And so practice to me means that you are kind to yourself, that you remain humble, and you just continue to pursue that in which you are called to do.
And one thing that you said also triggered a thought for me as well. The being kind to yourself piece, that is so important. And here's why. A lot of times when you start doing something, you get into that trap of comparing yourself to other people doing the same thing or similar thing. And the reality is you just don't know what their experience was, what it took for them to get there, how many years they've been doing that. And there's just no point in comparison because you're two different people. So be kind to yourself in that way as well. Don't spend time comparing what someone else is doing. Oh, I'll never get to their level. You're meant to be on your own road, on your own path, and things are going to work out for you how they're supposed to work out for you.
Mm-hmm. And I would add another note too, to go a bit more in the weeds around practicing making money.
Mm-hmm.
Treat your side hustle like a business and not a hobby. So what that means, we mentioned it, legitimizing your business with an LLC, maybe creating an accounting software like QuickBooks so that you can track all of your earnings, maybe opening up a business account, checking account with your local bank so that you now can separate your finances and not commingle, as they call it. You can have a separate personal checking that receives direct deposits from your job. And then you have your business checking account that receives deposits from your clients or your customers. And that way you can more accurately measure the health of your side hustle business. So that's a really good practice. Even if it's $100 or if it's $0 the first month, at least you know that's what you made and you can go up from there. The worst thing is to continue to use your own personal finances to overextend for a side hustle. I think there is such thing as bootstrapping a side hustle. And I don't want to be too aggressive because I do talk to entrepreneurs a lot where we're like all in trying to like take off and scale our business idea.
Yeah.
A side hustle is a little different because again, you set goals, but you set limits. And the same thing I tell entrepreneurs who are starting tech companies and want to scale to multi-million-dollar businesses is that if you are bootstrapping, meaning you haven't received any investment, you're using your own income from your job or from your savings to fund your business, then you have to have a hard conversation with yourself and say, how much money am I willing to inject into my company or into my side hustle and for how long? So you might say, I have $5,000 or I'll make $5,000 over the next 6 months that I'm willing to give myself to make this business profitable. And at the end of that runway, maybe this isn't the business that I should be in. And that's the conversation you have with yourself, right? You have to determine how much money you're willing to invest in your side hustle to make money. I also think a side hustle should be something that has low overhead and can be easily started up. So for example, this session with you right now is one of my side hustles. So I'm a speaker as for professionally, and I don't really have to, it doesn't cost me that much to speak. It costs me time to create the content. It costs me time to do the research. And I've already have years of experience that I've put into this that I now can show up and just share what's in my brain and provide it. So it's a very low overhead business that obviously generates revenue for me, but that takes time to master that. But there's other businesses that are very inexpensive that can generate more revenue in a short period of time.
And Johnny, I just want to add to that. For those of you who, I know most of you, I believe, are in like the medicine and STEM fields. I know there's a teacher in the house. Shout out to you.
Science teacher.
Science teacher. Well,
I don't know. I'm just
yeah, you can really milk that in some other ways too. But I just want to say, for anyone who feels like, I know I'm thinking back to my senior year of college self, and I was very much intimidated by business concepts. I felt like, that was for other people. That was for the, the business majors. That was for the econ majors. Like, I felt like, oh, that seems complicated when you start talking about LLCs and things like that. So number one, I want to say, take a step back from those thoughts. If you're having those kind of thoughts, and just remember that your first step is really just getting clarity on what it is that you want to do. What are your passions, and which one or two would you want to explore as a side hustle, and where do you want to begin exploring that? Like, focus on that step first before you think about, oh, I need to, incorporate a business and open a bank account and all of that stuff that may intimidate you. Not everyone, but some of you may feel intimidated. So just focus on the tiny steps first. And then remember that there's so much information about how to do it if and when it comes to that point. So I started with a blog, and then I started a podcast. So overall, I would say it was a year in before I opened up an actual LLC, and I incorporated and I trademarked and did all those things that were big, bad, and scary to me back in the day, and opened up my bank account. Like it was a year into just testing out first a blog, then the podcast before I did that. And then the last thing I'll say on this is, if and when you do get to that level and start a business entity, the good thing about that is you're able to expense. So as Johnny talked about, bootstrapping and all of this, like, this is not tax advice, big disclaimer. However, when you do have a business entity and a business bank account, the things that you would charge and are coming out of your personal pocket for, you can now expense if it's a business expense through your business account.
Just put in the chat, it would be great if we had a list of potential side hustles to share.
Yes. All right. Oh, but speaking of that, we're going to kick off that list, actually. So we're going to talk through some passive income ideas that you can start as a side hustle and share with us, share with Johnny and I. And, now after we kick this off, we definitely want to get into Q&A to answer some more of the questions that have been coming in. So if you are thinking about any of these, if you have started doing some of these, but these are just some top level, high level ideas that we know for sure can be turned into a passive income. So first things first, you can create an online course. I have experience with that. Johnny has experience with that. We can talk through that. Writing an ebook, that's something that you can create one time, creation of content, spend the energy once, and then you can resell it. You can, put ads against it on social media to keep promoting this and make money passively while you sleep. You can get into real estate investing or Airbnb. You can get into investing in dividends, and then you can get into affiliate influencer marketing. Irene, I know you said you had a YouTube channel, so you might have started doing that already. So these are just some of the things that you guys can all explore, and there's absolutely more. So let's get into it. We'll talk about charcuterie boards. We'll talk about it all the ideas that you have. So now
I would want to say, go back to that slide.
Yep.
So it's worth calling out that there's a difference between passive income and active income. I know we touched on it at the top, but I want to just reiterate that your active income is income that requires you to use your time and your energy and most likely be present in order to exchange your time, your energy for the money.
Mm-hmm.
A passive income stream is an income stream that you don't physically need to be anywhere in order for that transaction to be made and you to generate that income.
Yeah.
So what we have here, we talked about in this presentation, we talked about side hustles, which some of them can be active, like this is an active income stream per se. And we talked about passive incomes. And this list is really helpful, a list of passive ideas for a college student who's really busy, focusing on the studies and the midterms and the exams, and going into a STEM field that's maybe very time intensive and doesn't allow for a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. You're tired after 12-hour shift, right? So that's why we think passive is important, because ownership is key, right? You still got to own some income or own a company or a business. But what are the best ways for your lifestyle, your work-life balance? And these are just some ideas that we have. So I just wanted to kind of like add some clarity or context to that. I see Mihak has a question, says what we do with marketing skills that makes at least $1,000 a month. You can create an online course. You can create an ebook. Michaela, what would you say if someone has?
Yeah, so Mihak, I'd be curious to know, what do you define as marketing skills? What are you best at? Marketing can be very broad. Are you a social media expert? When it comes to that, what platforms are you specializing in? And what do you do on those platforms? Right now, I would hire someone for $1,000 to make me reels, to make me Instagram reels, okay, every month. I would do that. So, you have to really get granular and look at what people need right now. So right now, businesses need people to make really great reels and TikTok content for them, so they can, dial down all the great marketing ideas they have. They've been thinking about those marketing ideas. They did not expect to have to now make it into a completely new layout and distill it down into 15-second, 30-second. Sometimes I believe there's 7-second ones, right, that are doing really well. So yeah, get granular and make sure that when you're offering your skills, you let people know what it is that you do really well, and make it specific, because broad marketing, that's not marketable anymore. We need to know, what exactly do you do? And speaking of that, when I said write an ebook, so there's two ways you can think of this. So you can write an ebook about your skills, right? You can write a, how to use social media for your business ebook, or you could actually get onto a platform like Fiverr. That's Fiverr. And there are people there. It's a platform for freelancers who do things for you. So I could go on Fiverr and get someone to design and take my ideas and make it into a slide presentation for tonight's talk. I can get someone to take one of my podcast episodes and make it into an ebook. So when it comes to writing an ebook, that's something that's a little bit more active, but it's a side hustle idea.
Yeah, and to that point, Mihak, I would call out that if you have marketing skills and you want to provide your services as a freelancer, that's going to require active time, right? So that's an active income stream that you would be doing outside or in parallel of your studies or your job. Right. So that may or may not be what you want, right? So I recommend an online course as a passive income stream, because to me that says, if you have marketing skills, instead of selling your time to do marketing for someone, you can just put all of your information on how to be a great marketer into a course one time, package it, and then you can sell it online, right? So then you can charge $1,000 for one person to take that course. If you get 10 people, that's $10,000 versus you had to do nothing, right? After that first month, you're now just making passive income every single month.
speaking of that, Shavonia wants to know which platform is the best to create and sell an online course. So I currently use Teachable for my online courses. However, I will say that, there's so many other platforms that have popped up since then that are also really good. And when it comes to choosing a platform, do a free trial and see which user interface you are more comfortable with, because ultimately you need something that is user friendly for you. And also pay attention to how those platforms market their courses and how they treat their users. And if there are things that they do to market, or, make sure that your programs have an opportunity to be featured, pay attention to that as well. And Teachable does a good job of that.
I use Kajabi for my course, and I think the external facing interface is very elegant. The back end, it has some kinks to work out, but I've gotten pretty great reviews on the experience there. At Google, we use Coursera for our Skillshop software. So I'll drop it in the chat. Kajabi.
Yeah.
Course.
Also Thinkific, I believe you spell it like this.
And then Teachable.
Yep.
And then what I also recommend is that you take some online courses. So if Nikayla has one, if I have one, if someone else that's in your field has one, you can take an online course on how to practice more present in wellness, like mental or physical health wellness. And it may not be what you want to get into as a field.
Yeah.
Well, what you'll also learn is like the modality, the experience, the cadence, the sequence of the content that can inform you on how to build your own course. So I would like to say, go take a couple courses so that you can see how courses look and feel. And then you can have confidence and say, oh, I know I can do this. And then you go build your own.
Yep. And back to the idea of the ebook, because I think, when you're in college, like when I was in college, I used to sell my textbooks after I was done with them. And that got me thinking about, the fact that if you're taken a course and done really well in that course, if you could make a quick study guide and put together some best practices for how to succeed, maybe some tips on the professor, and make that into a quick ebook and sell that, get your hustle on. College is one of those times where you can also start practicing your side hustles. People, they used to charge to do haircuts, they used to charge to do hair. In my school, I know it's happening with your school too. So think about what hustle that you can just start practicing making money with.
The DJ, the barber, the hairstylist,
the flyer designer.
They're always the first entrepreneurs on campus. And you didn't really realize it, but you're like, damn, they're killing it. Because it's like so many people who have so much time and disposable income per se, and they need a service. You can really corner the market and get all of the customers that are available because you have a skill or an asset.
Yeah.
That's a good call out.
Do not underestimate what you do well. And I'm telling you, even if it's something you think is so easy, just test out.
Yeah, because your customer may be on campus.
Yeah.
That's something I had to just shift. Nikayla, you helped me shift my mindset to thinking if I'm a college student, I'm around 10,000 other college students. Yeah. I can really find something that they all need.
Yep.
And just provide it at scale.
Yeah. Anything you do well, somebody else wants to do well.
Cool. Any more questions? What else you guys have? You can go to the next slide, I suppose.
So this is the question slide. We are through with the tips. Yeah, we're through with the tips. And just to recap, the tips real quick, if we want to go back, I didn't do a recap slide, but so lesson 1, again, was to get out of your own head. Lesson 2 was to take small steps. Don't be intimidated. Just take those small steps to start the foundation, right? And then lesson 3, invest in your own development. Lesson 4, treat your side hustle like a job. And lesson 5 is to practice making money. So we shared some passive income ideas. And I hope that all of you guys, ideas are we're starting to generate ideas about if you came in here with side hustle and passive income ideas, started to think about, well, how do I really make this a reality? Or if you didn't have any ideas, starting to think about, okay, well, what do I enjoy doing? What do I do well? What's my calling? What do people call me for, that I can really start to think about monetizing, because it's time.
Type 1 in the chat if you learned something today. If you felt a bit more enlightened than you came in, something that we said stuck with you, let us know.
All right. I love that. I love to see that. I'd love to know some of the things that you learned now. Mm-hmm. I'd love to know what's your biggest takeaway and learning.
What is your takeaway? Now that you all have admitted that you've learned something, right, now you gotta tell us what you learned. What stuck with you today? What will you remember tomorrow? Gotcha.
All right. Yes. She saw him as a college student. I currently have a market for my skills. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You do. That's deep.
Kadai says, thank you for giving me more confidence to just go for it, and that there is no perfect time to do what I want to do. Absolutely. There is no perfect time. Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't wait for perfect circumstances to start.
Yeah.
I love that. I need to remind people of that too on Instagram. Thank you guys for reminding me, because I think sometimes nowadays when people see everybody else, you forget that everyone just started from where they are with what they had. No matter what it looks like today, they just started with where they are. And that's why I like talking to the women that I talk to on my podcast. So I interview bold Black women entrepreneurs who've scaled from side hustlers to full-time entrepreneurs. That's the theme of my podcast. And I love hearing their stories, because it inspires me. Honestly, I started that podcast thinking that it would help me to generate a business idea, not knowing that the podcast would end up becoming my business. And the more I spoke to these women, the more it gave me confidence. So listen to stories, feed your brain with that motivation each and every day to remind yourself, like, this is possible. It is possible to be multi-passionate. It is possible to figure out how I'll make this work. Hybrid life, that's true.
Yo, Dimitri made a good point too. Dimitri said, I love what he just said, or I'm not, hopefully it's a he or she, I'm not sure. Dimitri sounds like a male name. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I realized that I had a bias toward thinking that my skills weren't very in demand because they seem easier to me than they possibly are. That's really profound, because you think that something is easy to you or something that comes natural to you, that sometimes we think it's natural to everyone. Because you've always been good at it, you might just assume that that's something that people can easily do. But that's not always the case. Most times that is not the case. So don't underestimate your talents and abilities because they come natural to you.
I also want to add,
go ahead.
I also want to add to that. I should probably come off camera. Come on to camera. You all are in school, which means that you have access to free resources. So you can utilize them. It still may be scary to, try any kind of entrepreneurial pursuit, but if you're in a student club, then you can try, something there. You can kind of pilot it through your club and kind of see where it works, how it falls, without you having to completely put yourself out there. It's similar to kind of testing it out and seeing how viable your idea or your side hustle may be without you having to front any of the resources yourself. I have no idea if Hopkins has a studio, but I know previous institutions, they did, and those things are typically free to students. I know the DMC has, access to cameras and other types of media equipment that you can use for free, all things that you can use to get started. So in addition to kind of stepping outside of your head also, and I say this a lot to the students I advise, utilize all the resources that you have here, because once you graduate, you're gonna have to pay for them yourself, and it's very, very expensive. So use the groups that you're in to kind of see, like, I've always wanted to sell paper clips. Let me try to sell it to the people in my club and see if they're into it. Oh, they are? Great. Now I'm gonna, you like these paper clips, guys? Go ahead and leave a review for me because I'm starting this business. And the same thing, like I said before, like use whatever tech or whatever is available on campus to assist you.
Yo, and plus one to that, because from my time working at Amazon, I realized that there are so many products that people buy every single day. And it might seem mundane to you. Medina said paper clips. People buy paper clips. A business will buy paper clips every single month. And that could be a multi-million dollar business of just selling paper clips.
Yeah. And
So
if you're
don't
like
underestimate
me,
that.
yeah, if you design cute paper clips, if you're like me, you see how I like to decorate. I will buy some pink, gold, whatever, decorated paper clips, African print paper clips. Like there's a market.
Yep. So don't underestimate it. And check out Amazon because you can get your product there and you get tap into a much larger audience as well.
Mhm. I'm so glad you guys, shared the things you took away from it, because even for me, it's helpful to know what resonates. Like I might think sometimes when I'm putting together lessons, like this is so, like everyone has to know this, right? But sometimes you just need to see that you need that reminder as you go. Like we all need that reminder. And by the way, I just shared a beginning podcast course that I teach on Skillshare for anyone. It's free who, just wants to dive in and learn a little bit more about what that entails. And you just use this code to get Skillshare free for 14 days. So I hope that can be of assistance to anyone who is interested in that.
Cool. Well, any other questions that you all have for us today? Oh, okay, I see a direct message coming in. How do you put yourself out there and build a customer base if you have concerns that someone might want to steal your idea?
So 9 times out of 10, this concern is more of an excuse we're using not to get started than it is actually something we need to be concerned about. And here's why I state this. Most of the things that you're putting out there are not truly original, right? Like creating paper clips with a certain design. Like people have created paper clips before and they've designed them before. Podcasting. People have created podcasts before. In fact, before I started Side Hustle Pro, there were other podcasts about side hustling. There continue to be more podcasts that pop up about side hustling, but they didn't have the angle and the lens and the mind that I have, meaning they can copy something that you put out there, but they will have to continue to watch your every move to copy every single thing you do. So 9 times out of 10, I'm not trying to downplay this concern. It absolutely can happen, but I'm telling you 9 times out of 10, what I see, rather than people copying from an entrepreneur and taking them, or a side hustler and taking them out of business, I see side hustlers sit on the sidelines, not putting themselves out there because of all these made up concerns they have in their head that have not come to fruition. So worry about things when they happen rather than before it happens, unless you have some kind of evidence that this concern or worry is actually going to happen.
Great answer. Hey, y'all. Well, this is our time. Would love to come back and do this again. Thank you so much, Medina, for having us here and allowing us to share some best practices and some tips, lessons on side hustle and passive income. Hopefully you all will take this and run with it. You have the confidence, you have the market all around you and college students, and you have a lot of time. So I hope that you all will start your side hustle sooner than later and continue to use myself and Nikayla as mentors or resources. We dropped our social media information in the chat, so feel free to connect and we'll be around. Medina.
Yep. So only thing I have to say is thank you both so much. I mean, you were already a part of the Fly family, JB. Welcome to the Fly family. We are so happy to
thank you. This was awesome. I'm so happy to be here and to be a part of fam now.
Yes, everyone give them a round of applause, please. And before you all leave, if you don't mind taking this evaluation, it literally takes about 6 minutes to complete. We use these to determine what kind of workshops and programs to provide for you. They don't go into a black hole. We actually look at the results and utilize it. So please complete that before you exit. I'm going to hang out in here for a little bit. If anyone has any questions about anything else coming up, our next program is on April 9th. It is called Where the Money Resides. This is talking about preparing for your finances after you graduate and go into the real world, So please make sure you complete the evaluation. Thank you, JB and Nikayla, for being our besties and giving us tools and gems. All right, that's all I have. I'm going to stop the recording.
All right, y'all. Peace.